This episode's a trip. Just putting it out there. So the episode starts out with Bishop going to meet this like shady guy in a nightclub, and he's really attracted to her because she reminds him of his aunt. But that's its own Criminal Minds episode, I guess. She gets the drive and she goes outside to bring it to Odette. But Bishop says she's not blindly keeping secrets for Ziva anymore and walks off with the drive. Meanwhile, Gibbs heads over to Phineas's house to fix their faucet, but it turns out that all he had to do was turn off the water. So I guess Google was also broken that night. Gibbs also notices this like really gnarly cut on Sarah's hand, and she says she cut it on a sharp pipe. And the worst part is, she might not be lying. Bishop has gone back to the squad room and is reporting to the rest of the team what's going on. The team is like desperately trying to figure out what's happening, and Jimmy Palmer's just happy to be there. They plug in the drive and see that it contains a picture of Adam being led into a warehouse in handcuffs. Gibbs goes to confront Ziva at a loading dock, and she says that she knows nothing about the pickup with Odette and Bishop. She does confirm that the one thing she had to do was make sure that Adam is safe because she hasn't been able to get in contact with him and feels like something is wrong. We then get a flashback to the night of the farmhouse fire. In this flashback, we get to see Ziva handing over Tali to Adam to give to Tony. I'm like kind of just brushing by it a little bit, but it's really fucking traumatic. Back in the present, Ziva is at NCIS explaining to the team that Adam was a mole inside Sahar's splinter group, and that's how he was able to warn her about their attack on Gibbs. So when Ziva went to warn him about the attack, Adam was exposed. Down in the lab, Ziva and Jimmy briefly reunite, and she meets Casey for the first time and messes up an idiom, and it's just beautiful. Casey is also able to figure out what warehouse they brought Adam to. Do you guys remember many holiday episodes ago, there was this scene where Gibbs was helping a woman give birth in like a car garage while Ziva was just like massacring people, and for some reason Silent Night was playing in the background. Because this is the spiritual successor to that scene. So Ziva and Gibbs are like creeping through the warehouse trying to figure out where these people are, and all of a sudden they faintly hear Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. And then they open the door and it's a gunfight. Set to Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. The music cuts off and they find Adam's decaying body, which is even more horrifying when you realize he's still alive. They're asking Adam about Sahar, and all he can say is, "You know her." While they're trying to find the keys to unhandcuff him, they end up falling through the floorboards. So Ziva's knocked out in the fall, and she flashes back to Adam telling her about Tali and Tony. Adam shows her pictures of Tony taking Tali to the park, and it's all these photographs of the two of them. McGee was also in this scene, by the way. Like, he also went to the park with Tony and Tali. So Adam really just said, "Fuck McGee." Ziva tells Adam that she's concerned because she knows for a fact that Tony and Gibbs will come looking for her. 1 out of 2 ain't bad, I guess. It then evolves into the flashback we saw in the premiere with him giving her the anxiety medication. Gibbs then wakes her up and they try and find a way out. Ziva keeps trying to knock down this pole because she thinks that knocking down this pole will collapse the building, and then, you know, it's easier to escape a building when there's no building left. And Gibbs just keeps telling her, like, you can't protect your daughter if you're dead. But I'm like 90% sure that's the plot of Daughters. So Gibbs says they need to take a short break to let their muscles recharge, and he distracts her by getting her to tell him about Tali. Ziva tells him this story about how Tali hates band-aids. She also very casually mentions that Tony tracked her down in Cairo many years ago, in case you were wondering. But the two of them have had very little contact since then. When, oh, I'm getting choked up. When Tony found her in Cairo, he had Tali with him, and she had a cut on her knee, and the only way he could get her to wear a band-aid is by cutting it into the shape of a little heart. Oh. Conveniently enough, this story gave their muscles just enough time to recharge. Sure. They're able to pry open the door and run back upstairs. Ziva runs over to Adam and tries to resuscitate him, but unfortunately it's already too late. The team also realizes they didn't kill Sahar. It was just one of her henchmen. So that's great. We then cut to another flashback, and this time it's of Adam telling Ziva that he was able to infiltrate the splinter group. Adam then confesses to Ziva that he is deeply in love with her. And Ziva's like, thanks. He does say that he respects that she loves Tony though, so. That's fine, I guess. Gibbs then meets Ziva in her office and she's like, why are you here? I feel like whenever she asks this question, she's not really ever ready for the answer. Gibbs tells Ziva that he thinks she should call Tony and have him move Tali into hiding, but Ziva's afraid that if she calls him, he'll realize how bad it's gotten and then come to help her. She can't have Tony getting involved because she won't have Tali lose both her parents. Tony and Ziva are parents. And to the same child. And then Gibbs is like, I'm a little concerned that these years in isolation might have messed with your head a little bit. And Ziva's like, you're wrong, and I'm gonna prove that you're wrong by going absolutely batshit crazy. He's essentially questioning her judgment, and she's like, you know what? Maybe my judgment was off the day that I killed my brother to save you, so. Yikes. In Autopsy, Jimmy and Guy thank Adam for protecting Ziva. They also talk about how, like, gruesomely he was tortured, so happy holidays! They also see that one of the captors that they killed had stamps on the back of their hand which matched the stamps that Bishop got to go into the club. So Bishop decides to go back to the club and try and seduce some information out of Victor. She goes and he makes like sexual pie comments and they go to the back room and he's singing gospel songs. Somewhere along the line this episode turned into a fever dream and I don't really know where. The team busts in and gets Victor to admit that Sahar is posing as a woman named Sarah who has a son named Phineas. That narrows it down a little bit. They burst into the house and Sarah is not there, but Phineas is. Phineas is understandably upset at the situation and he makes Gibbs promise that his mom will not get hurt. Technically, I don't think she feels pain. Gibbs also figures out that that laptop that Phineas has been using to like AOL instant message him has been bugged. You can probably guess by who. Ziva, meanwhile, bursts in on Victor, who's currently in interrogation. And Victor's like, this is illegal. You can't do this. And Ziva's like, you know what? I don't even work here. So Ziva holds a knife up to his throat and gets him to admit that Sahar was the one that was torturing Adam. And Sahar probably doesn't even know he's dead yet and will most likely be on her way back to the warehouse right now. Ziva goes to the warehouse and lo and behold, Sarah is already there. They start fighting and eventually Sarah traps Ziva under a pipe. Sarah says that while Adam was delirious with pain, he accidentally revealed to her that Ziva had a daughter. She then says that she's gonna kill her daughter and end her legacy. But Ziva says that her daughter will be everything that she's meant to be. Ziva then starts like vigorously kicking the pole. The pole is the North Pole, by the way. It's the North Pole. Before Ziva can kick down the pole and collapse the building, Gibbs swoops in and shoots Sarah in the head Kill Ari style. Back in the squad room, Sloane has this really interesting conversation with the rest of the team. It's essentially her saying that 14 years ago Ziva killed Ari and 14 years later they're still feeling the ramifications of it. Odette and Bishop are then just like chilling in Ziva's office and Odette reveals that this whole thing with the flash drive was actually a test for Bishop all along and that Odette would like to train her. Back at Gibbs' house, Ziva walks in and she tells him that she did end up calling Tony and telling him to take Tali into hiding. And once they're safe and settled, Tony will make contact with her again. Ziva also says that she should have gone to Gibbs after the explosion. Can you imagine if she just like walked up to Gibbs' house and was like, hey, by the way, I'm alive, this is my daughter, Tony's her father, don't say anything about it. She also apologizes for suggesting she should have let him be murdered. Yikes again. Gibbs is like, you know what, I'm glad I killed someone for you too. And then he like gives her a forehead kiss. Ugh. And then Phineas wakes up and Gibbs is like, guess I gotta deal with this now. And that is the North Pole. My biggest thing with this episode is that I really do like a lot of the ideas. I just wasn't wild about the execution of some of them. I feel like the biggest example of that is Gibbs killing Sarah. Because to me, it felt like they were equating Ziva killing Ari with Gibbs killing Sarah. And I get that the sacrifice was not really Sarah, the sacrifice was Gibbs and Phineas's relationship. I do think that's a huge loss for him and that's such like a tragic thing that has happened, but I don't think it's equivalent. I think it would have been more successful if we had known Phineas for a longer period of time, like if we had watched his and Gibbs's relationship build over like even the course of a season would have been really helpful. The fact that we only met him like 5 or 6 episodes ago, I just feel like the relationship was not strong enough to make that comparison. What I did love, though, was Sloane's quote about the ramifications of Ziva killing Ari. It kind of reminded me of what Past, Present, Future, I think, was trying to do, but it did it better, in my opinion. I think it's so powerful because literally everything down to Tali's existence stems from Ziva killing Ari. That plot line, that concept, I think is so integral to the show at this point and all of the characters and what they've become over the past 17 seasons. Speaking of legacy, I really liked the whole thing with like Sarah saying that she and Ari were building a legacy and now she's gonna end Ziva's legacy. Interestingly, she referred to Ziva's legacy as Tali, and I don't know, maybe Sarah and Ari had their own little legacy, their own little... I've also seen some other people, you know, theorize that maybe Phineas is Sarah and Ari's child. I don't know how that works because I think he was dead before Phineas could have even been conceived. Another thing I was originally really split about was that whole thing where Ziva was like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have killed my brother to protect you. I think it was more of a tactic to get Gibbs to leave her alone. You know, if she hurts him bad enough, he'll step back from the situation and let her handle it the way that she wants to be handling it. I don't know if I'm fully on board with that scene. I do get kind of where it was coming from. That scene with Adam.
It never goes away.
Oh no. It very much had You Were My Shannon vibes. You know? I also was a little bit afraid for a second that they were gonna make out. Like she was gonna give him like a pity kiss or something and I was gonna have to blowtorch my retinas. But we never went there, which I appreciate. I know people have mixed opinions about Adam. You gotta give the man some credit. He literally just gave his life so that the woman he loves could be with her child and the man that she loves. Who is not him, by the way. It's a different guy. I do wonder if there's gonna be any more like avenging Adam going on because I feel like we covered that with her killing the real Sahar this time. Hopefully, oh my god. I really liked that they thanked Adam for protecting Ziva and I hope we can just kind of appreciate that and lay that aspect of the storyline to rest. Sarah being Sahar, to me at least, wasn't all that shocking. Again, and I know a lot of people were theorizing similar things. I do think it was an interesting plot point. I just really wish we had built out that relationship between Sarah, Phineas, and Gibbs for a little bit longer. I love how at the end of Sarah's first episode, I was like, she's staring at him with a vibe that I just can't quite place. It turns out that vibe was, I'm gonna kill your daughter. Another one of my big questions is, are we ever gonna factor Trent Court and the events of Family First into this? Family First did set up this whole storyline as to what had happened to Ziva and the farmhouse. I do wonder if we're gonna incorporate that into the storyline or if we're just gonna like sweep that under the rug. But Trent Court is British. Do with that what you will. What's gonna happen to Phineas? I feel so terrible for him that he got caught up in this, and I really hope his life does not take this like tragic downward spiral that we sometimes like to go on with NCIS. I do think his reason for leaving is that he's gonna end up going back with his dad. Sarah had said that the dad was shady. Sarah herself was pretty shady, so is the dad just like a normal guy that she villainized? Maybe Sarah even like kidnapped him from the dad or something. I don't really know because obviously she's a little bit more villainous than we had originally anticipated. Some people were wondering if he was going to end up staying with Gibbs, if Gibbs was going to become like a foster dad to him. I don't think that's going to be the situation, again, because I think Jack Fisher said that he had wrapped on NCIS for now. I also just don't know how well him killing his foster son's mother would pan out in court, but what do I know? I really do want to see how much Gibbs tells Phineas. I think there's certainly a number of loose ends we still need to tie up, especially when it comes down to Sarah and Ari's relationship, Sarah and Phineas's relationship, and Phineas and his dad's relationship. Cairo. Let's talk about Cairo for a minute.
He tracked me down in Cairo.
I had kind of anticipated that Tony knew that Ziva was alive. I really didn't expect this whole Band-Aid story situation. I love that there has been at least some contact between Tony and Ziva, going back and forth even a little bit. I was not expecting the flashback of Ziva handing over Tali. It was really upsetting. I love that we're essentially getting Family First from Ziva's point of view. I would love for like someone to make like a timeline of both Tony's side of things and Ziva's side of things. I think that would be really fascinating. With Bishop and Odette, I was not expecting that at all. I mean, it does open up a really interesting potential plot line. I think it was in the third episode, McGee kind of wondered if Bishop was afraid of becoming Ziva, and We never saw if Bishop had that fear herself or if that was just something that McGee was wondering, but I do wonder if this whole thing where Odette could potentially put Bishop on a more like Ziva lifestyle track, if that could bring the topic of that fear back to the surface, that could be really interesting to discuss, especially between Bishop and Ziva. I know some of these Ziva episodes get a little bit gritty and sometimes it's a little bit hard to watch. Like again, that Mr. Rogers hand chopping necklace situation is still deeply unsettling to me. This might be like an unpopular opinion, I'm sorry. I do kind of like that they took it to a little bit of a darker place. I think that this arc was so dark, it does deserve some semblance of a happy ending. I'm not saying that everything has to be perfect. I'm not saying she has to be completely healed mentally, because I don't think that's even possible, but I would like to see that we're headed in the right direction, and I would like to see that she's reunited with her family. Will we get that? Beats me. Into the Wind. Let's talk about Into the Wind. Because I am absolutely fascinated what they're going to end up doing with this episode and how they're going to end it. You know, obviously this is Ziva's last episode for the foreseeable future, but they've also introduced this really heavy plotline with Gibbs and Phineas and him, like, you know, murdering his mother, that whole thing. Obviously, I think Ziva's storyline needs to be wrapped up. I think that deserves so much time and dedication. And again, I really do hope and think they understand that. I believe there's a way they can present both plot lines on a equally important interweaving track. As far as promotional pictures go, there's one of the team all looking at something on McGee's phone and they're like laughing. I do wonder if it's something to do with Tali, like if it's a picture of Tali, because we do see in the promo that there will be a picture of Tali. My like immediate reaction to it was like, oh my god, they're staring at a picture of Tony and Ziva and Tali and they're all reunited. And like, is that it? Unsure. Would I like it to be? Hell yeah. There's some shots of Gibbs with Sloane and Vance in MTAC. I imagine that's gonna have to do with him hunting down Phineas, because according to the promo it does look like Phineas has gone missing, that he's run away. It also looks like we'll be getting a lot of Gibbs, Torres, and Ziva together, which is really an interesting trio. I do wonder what kind of conversations Ziva and Torres are going to be having, especially if we'll be bringing up that whole don't be a wuss, tell her how you feel thing again. I would love that. There's also a scene of Ziva and Gibbs in the car and Ziva gets a picture of Tali on her phone and she just starts like happy crying, and it's, oh my god. I imagine that that picture is from Tony, because I don't know who else would have sent her that. There's another scene with Jimmy and Ziva down in Autopsy, and Jimmy's like, I haven't seen Gibbs this mildly inconvenienced since you died, or something like that. Ziva neck punches someone, that's thrilling. It looks like there's some flashbacks of conversations between Gibbs and Phineas, and I wonder if that's Gibbs explaining maybe what happened to his mom. That seems like it's gonna be painful and a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm very nervous where those conversations are gonna go. Gibbs asks Ziva an interesting question where it's like, you've been spending all this time trying to get back to Paris and now that you can, you're not. And then Ziva's like, I know what Phineas means to you, which is true and very sweet, and I really love that she's putting herself out there to help Gibbs like that. She does say Paris can wait, which is that's really great for her that she can wait for Paris, but like, hi, can I wait for it? Probably not. Did Sahar tell anyone before she was killed that Ziva had a daughter? Because God almighty, I hope not. I feel like we've brought this aspect of the plotline to like a pretty solid close. We've conquered the real Sahar. I feel like we can just, I don't know, let Sahar rest. Take a nap at least. I think at this point it's better to move on to the other aspects of the plotline, like Phineas's father maybe, and then Ziva being reunited with her family. Speaking of which, will Tony and Tali appear? We do see that we get some sort of Tali appearance with that picture. If I had to go with my gut, I feel like we might see her. Am I certain? Absolutely not. I'm not certain about anything, to be quite honest, just in life. Tony's a wild card to me. At this point, I'm more so formulating ideas of like how Tali could appear without Tony. I had that theory last week that maybe she would appear as like a hallucination, but I think we've moved a little bit beyond that. I don't know necessarily why she would appear as a hallucination. Again, maybe she just runs off the plane. She's like, I was waiting on board. Like, that could be it, I guess. There's always the option of like Senior or Orly bringing Tali back to Ziva, and I get that those are viable options. Like, I can see why both of those people would have contact with Tali. I don't understand why they would have more contact with her than Tony would. But I guess we would see. We haven't really seen her interact with Sloane or Vance, and I would love to see both of those interactions. I would also love to see like a more full-fledged interaction with Jimmy. That would be so nice. You know, we've gotten so many, again, gritty, dramatic things, and I just want to see some softer moments as well, like some really like joyful or sweet or familial moments. I think we've already put her through so much that this final episode for now could be a really great opportunity to see some of those more wholesome things, I guess. Are there things that I would really love to see? Yes, I'm sure you can imagine what they are. As long as we leave this in a better place in past, present, future, I'll be content. I just really want to leave off this episode in a good place, with Ziva's character in a good place. Again, not completely healed or completely who she was 10 years ago, because to be quite honest, I don't really think she could ever be that exact same person again. But I would love to see that we are headed in the right direction of her getting to a better place. Please let me know your guys' thoughts on this episode, as well as your theories for next episode. What are some things that not only like you're theorizing about, but some things that you would just like to see? And I think that's it. I will see you guys for the recap and review of Into the Wind.